Hello and welcome once again on the lecture series of course Elements of Machine Design. Today we are in the lecture number 12. We are in the lecture number 13. In last lecture we have seen the concept of repeated stresses, concept of cyclic stress, what is meant by fatigue and fatigue failure, what is meant by endurance limit, the significance of SN curve, how SN curve is drawn, and we have also studied about the different silent points on the significance curve, SN curve. So in today's lecture we will study the different theories of elastic failure and different aesthetical and ergonomical considerations in machine design. So start with theories of elastic failure. There are total 5 theories of elastic failure, but subject point of view we are interested in 3 theories of elastic failure. Now before actually going into the theories of elastic failure, first of all try to understand what is the significance of theories of elastic failure. Now these theories provides a relationship between the strength of machine component subjected to complex state of stresses. Complex state of stress means in a component there are more than one kind of a stress is induced. That's why it is known as the complex state of stress with the mechanical properties obtained in tension test. Now with the help of these theories, the data obtained in tension test can be used to determine the dimensions of the component irrespective of the nature of stresses induced in component due to several types of loading simultaneously. In short, with the help of theories of elastic failure, we can determine the different dimensions of the component for induction of different types of stresses in a component. Now these theories can be used for ductile materials, can be used for brittle materials. So depending upon the nature of material, we can use a respective theory of failure. So from subject point of view, there are 3 types of the theories which are important, that is maximum principle or normal stress theory. Second is maximum shear stress theory, and last one is the maximum distortion energy theory. Now one by one we will see what is the meaning of these theories and what is the significance of these theories. Now first of all, let's go through the normal stress theory. It is also known as the maximum principal stress theory. Now what this theory depicts, what this theory tells us, what is the significance of this theory, what information we get from this theory. Now according to this theory, the failure of a component or yielding of a component or a member occurs when the maximum principal stress or normal stress Normal stress means the stress which is perpendicular to the sides of that element, that is the direct stress. Tensile or compressive stress in a biaxial stress system. Biaxial means two axis. Biaxial stress system reaches the limiting strength of the material in a simple tension test. Now what this theory tells us? According to this theory, the component will fail when the maximum normal stress in that component reaches the limiting strength of the material in a simple tension test. Now, since the limiting strength for ductile materials means limiting stress, yield point stress for the ductile material is the yield point stress. Now this is the limiting strength for the ductile material, that is the yield point stress, and for brittle materials the limiting strength is ultimate stress. Means what? For designing of a ductile material, we are taking the yield point stress value as the criteria for designing a particular ductile material. Means as a design engineer, the stress induced in component should not cross the yield point stress. Means below yield point stress, the material is safe. Means we have to design a ductile material by keeping in mind yield point stress of that material. That's why yield point stress, this stress we have seen in the stress strain diagram. Now this yield point stress is the limiting strength value for the ductile materials. Hence, according to the above theory, and for brittle materials, the limiting strength value is ultimate stress. Now this is the ultimate stress, and yield point stress is for ductile materials, and for brittle materials ultimate stress is the limiting strength value. Hence, according to this theory, taking factor of safety into account, the maximum normal stress, this is the value of maximum normal stress, it may be tensile or it may be compressive, the maximum normal stress in a biaxial system, biaxial stress system, is given as sigma T is equal to sigma YT upon factor of safety for ductile materials. The same value of maximum normal stress or maximum principal stress for brittle material is the ultimate strength, ultimate stress. Because according to this theory, the component will fail when this value of stress will reach sigma YT in case of ductile materials and sigma UT in case of brittle materials. So, since the maximum principal normal stress theory is based on failure in tension or compression, that is the normal, that's why it is known as the normal stress. It ignores the possibility of failure due to shearing stress. Means this theory only assumes that the failure of component will took place only due to normal stress, that is compressive stress or tensile stress, and it does not take into account the induced shear stress. Therefore, it is not used for ductile materials. Means we are using this theory for the brittle materials. Since the theory is based on failure of tension and compression, and ignores the possibility of failure due to shearing stress. Therefore, it is not used for ductile materials, because we know that the ductile materials can be failed due to the induction of shear stress. So this theory, that is the Rankine's theory, is used for designing of brittle materials. So this formula is important from solving of problems. That is, normal stress can be given as sigma u, that is the ultimate stress, divided by factor of safety. So in conclusion, according to normal stress theory, the component will fail in a simple tensile test when its limiting strength value will reach to the yield point value of that material. If the material is ductile, then yield point value will be yield point stress. If the material is brittle, then the yield point value will be ultimate stress. The significance of this theory is used for designing of brittle materials when there is a induction of only tensile and compressive stress in the system or component. Now next move to the next theory, that is the maximum shear stress theory. It is concerned with the maximum normal. Normal means maximum tensile or maximum compressive. And it is concerned with the maximum shear stress theory. Means it takes into account the failure of component due to shear stress. Now, as we have seen, maximum normal stress theory, this theory is used for designing, that is the maximum normal stress theory is used for designing of components such as machine spindles, machine beds and overhang cranks. If such elements are there, then we can use the maximum normal stress theory. Now, what is meant by maximum shear stress theory? It is also known as the Guest or Tresca theory. Maximum normal stress theory is known as the Rankine's theory. It is known as the Guest or Tresca theory, that is the maximum shear stress theory. Now, according to this theory, the failure or yielding at a point in a component will took place when the maximum shear stress, here maximum principal stress, but in this case maximum shear stress in a biaxial stress system reaches a value equal to the shear stress at yield point, because the limiting strength value for ductile materials when it is subjected to shear stress is the shear stress at yield point, that is the tau yt, shear stress at yield point. So from this we can find out the value of maximum shear stress. As we have find out the value of maximum normal stress as sigma ut, ultimate stress divided by factor of safety if the brittle material is there, and sigma yt upon factor of safety if ductile material is there. From these equations we have find out maximum normal or maximum principal stress. Keep in mind, here we are finding maximum shear stress. That can be find out by using this equation, that is the shear stress at yield point divided by factor of safety. Here we have taken the yield point stress and ultimate stress. Here we are taking yield stress, yield point shear stress at yield point. So this theory is mostly used for designing ductile materials because it takes into account the failure of the component due to the induction of shear stress. Now this shear stress theory or maximum shear stress theory is used for designing of crankshafts, propeller shafts or C-frames. Means the any components or materials which are made up of by ductile materials, this theory is used. So these are the two theories which are important from subject point of view, that is the maximum normal stress theory, that is the principal stress theory, and maximum shear stress theory. Maximum principal stress theory is used for designing of a component which are made up of brittle or ductile material, but most of the time brittle material, because it does not consider shear stress failure, and maximum shear stress theory is used for designing of the members which are made up of ductile materials, because it takes into account the failure of the component due to the induction of shear stress. This is regarding the theories of elastic failure which are used for designing of component, that is to determine the dimensions of the component. Now let's move towards the modern design considerations. Now modern design considerations mean, up to this point we have understood the fundamental basics of stress, we have understood the types of loading, we have understood the types of strains, we have also studied the stress strain diagram, we have also studied the different types of the stresses that are induced in the component when it is subjected to different applications. We have also understand what is meant by designing of a component, which procedure is need to be followed for designing of a component. In that process we have considered how to determine the dimensions of the component by taking into account the different stresses induced in the component. We have also understood the concept of repeated stress, that is the cyclic stress. What is the importance of cyclic stress that is taken into account, which determines the endurance strength of the component. We have also understood how the SN curve is formulated, what is meant by the endurance limit, what is meant by the fatigue strength of the component. So we have also undergone the different properties of the materials. Why study of properties is important from subject point of view. We have also undergone the different theories of failures, how these theories of failures are important from design point of view. So up to this point we have studied the analytical point of machine design. Now in this, like from this onwards, we are studying the aesthetical considerations. What are the modern design considerations apart from determining the dimensions of the component? What are the different parameters are necessary which need to be taken into account for designing of a particular component, means after determining the dimensions? The first consideration is the aesthetical consideration that we need to take into account, because in a present day of buyer's market, we know that number of products are available in market, and these products are having most of the parameters identical, that is the appearance of the product. Hence the aesthetical considerations of the product, that is the appearance of the product, plays an important role while attracting the customer. Now after deciding the dimensions, after deciding the manufacturing processes, after calculation of the stresses, after studying the analysis of the different types of the load acting on the component, when that component is market ready, before making it market ready, it is necessary to understand the psychology of the customer. Means main aim is to attract the customer towards your product. So from this point of view, it is necessary to understand the importance of aesthetics and ergonomics. So first of all, we will understand what is the importance of the aesthetic considerations. But before going into the aesthetical considerations, first of all try to understand what is meant by the aesthetics. Now aesthetics is defined as a set of principles of appreciation of beauty. Means, what are the different parameters that need to be taken into account which appreciates the beauty of the product. Now in simple language, it deals with the appearance of the product. Means it concentrates on the appearance of the product. As a design engineer, it is necessary we need to think about the how we can improve the appearance of the product. So what is meant by appearance? The appearance is nothing but it is an expression. It is an expression of quality of the product, and it is the first communication of the product with the user. In simple language, when we goes into the market to buy a product, say example of a mobile, different companies are available in market to sell the mobiles. Different manufacturers are available to sell the mobile. We undergo different specifications of the product. Means we undergo different specifications of the mobiles. The mobiles having same specifications are also available. Different mobiles with the same specifications also available. Different mobiles with the same price, same specifications are also available in the market. But when we look at that product, when we look at that mobile, this is the first communication by that product with the customer. Because first of all, we look at that product. We don't know about the technical specifications of that product. We have not understand the different specifications of the product. We have not read the different specifications of the product. But when we look at that product, the first click that occurs in the mind of a customer that whether I have to buy this product or not is the appearance of the product. That's why we can say the appearance is an outward expression of quality of the product, and it is the first communication made by the product with the customer. That is, aesthetic quality contributes to the performance of the product, though the extent of contribution varies from product to product. For example, the chromium plating of the automobile components improves the corrosion resistance along with the appearance. Means if we give a chromium plating to the automobile components, it also improves the appearance of the product as well as it improves the corrosion resistance property of the product. In this manner, we have to think about the aesthetical considerations of the product. So what are the different guidelines or what are the different parameters that need to be considered for the aesthetical design? The first parameter is the appearance should contribute to the performance of the product. Means what? For example, the aerodynamic shape of the car will have a lesser air resistance, resulting in lesser fuel consumptions. Means we should not only think about the giving appearance to the product, but it should contribute to the performance of the product. Now, as we have seen the example. If we give the aerodynamic shape to the vehicle, if we give aerodynamic shape to the automobile, it automatically contributes to the appearance of the product. Means it improves the appearance of the product, but at the same time it improves the performance of the product by offering less air resistance, which also improves the fuel efficiency. Means side by side we have to think about the giving appearance to the product as well as to improve the performance of the product. Now giving this kind of an aerodynamic shape, it also adds to the performance of the product. That's why it is necessary to understand how we can improve the performance of the product by giving aesthetical considerations. The second part is the appearance should reflect, means the overall appearance of the product, aesthetics should reflect the function of the product. Means by looking at the appearance of the product, by looking at the overall look of the product, shape of the product, it should reflect the function of the product. Now take the example of the same example, the shape of the automobile vehicle, or take the example of the shape of the racing cars. Now if we give an aerodynamic shape to the automobile, that means it reflects that this car is used for as a racing car. Means it reflects the function of the product. It also reflects that if it is having an aerodynamic shape, that means it is good for higher speeds. This automobile is good for higher speeds. It can operate at the higher speeds. Means at the same time when you are giving the appearance to the product, it also reflects the function of that product. That's why it is said that when you are looking at the appearance as an aesthetical consideration, you need to consider it should reflect to the function of the product. Now third design criteria is it should reflect the quality of the product, means the appearance. Now these all criteria is for the appearance of the product. First is it reflect the performance of the product, it should reflect the performance of the product. Second part is it should reflect the function of the product. Third is it should reflect the quality of the product. Now take the simple example of the hydraulic press, or take the simple example of the lathe machine. If the appearance of that hydraulic press, appearance of the lathe machine is robust, ज्याला आपण दणकट म्हणतो, if the appearance of that lathe machine or that product of that hydraulic press, or we can say appearance of that automobile, then we can say that it reflects the strength and rigidity. If we compare the two cars, and if we just have a look on the appearance of the car, by looking at the appearance we come to know which car is robust. If we take the example of Maruti and if we take the example of Hyundai, by just looking at the appearance of the car we come to know which car is robust and rigid. Means through this appearance it should reflect the quality of the product. The fourth part is the appearance should not be too much of extra cost unless it is a prime importance. Means we should not add, it should not increase the cost. Means if we are going to increase more and more appearance to the product, if we are focused more and more on the appearance of the car, and if it is adding to the cost of the car, that means that product is not feasible. That's why we need to take into account the cost factor also. If you are using that product, if you are not using that product usually, then it is not necessary to give appearance to that product. But if you are using that product usually according to its applications, take the simple example of the family car and courier vehicles, carrier vehicles. If we are giving more and more appearance to the truck, buses, or goods carrier, then it will add the cost of the product, but it is not necessary for that goods carrier vehicles to give a better appearance, but it is necessary to give the appearance to the family cars. If we add more appearance to the family cars, it's okay. because it is important. But if you are going to add more and more appearance to the goods carrier vehicles, then it is not the requirement of that function. If you are going to add more and more appearance to the railways which is carrying goods, then it is not the requirement of that functionality. That's why you should look into the function of that component, the application of that component, and depending on that application you should decide what cost we can bear to the appearance of the product. The last and most important part, the appearance should be suitable to the environment in which the product is used. Means we should not only consider in improving the appearance of the product, but the different ways by which you are improving the appearance of the product. That product should be suitable to that environment, that appearance should be suitable in that environment. So if you are giving more and more appearance to the automobile vehicle, and if that automobile vehicle is used in most of the rainy season, then it will not add the beauty to that product. It will add the cost effectiveness to that product. So in any stage in the product life, the aesthetic quality cannot be separated from the product quality. Means in default, that aesthetic quality and product quality should have a hand in hand. So these are some guidelines regarding the appearance of the product. What factors need to be considered while designing for appearance? When we are designing a component for appearance, what factors we need to consider? That factors we have highlighted here. The growing importance of these aesthetic considerations in product design has given rise to separate discipline known as the industrial design. Now, it is one of the part of the mechanical engineering, that is the industrial design. This branch arises due to the importance of the aesthetical considerations, because most of the time we are not giving most of the importance to the aesthetical considerations, but with the product quality, with another technical specifications, it is very necessary to have a look at the aesthetical considerations. So these are some guidelines for designing a product for appearance, that is the aesthetical considerations. In next lecture we will see what are the different aesthetical considerations, or what are the different parameters which are taken into account in case of aesthetical considerations. I hope you have understood what is meant by the theories of failure. You have understood what is meant by the design for consideration, modern design consideration, that is the aesthetical considerations. Thank you.